Welcome to Strategic Management. This is our first lecture, Unit 1. We will be looking at the strategic management process and strategic competitiveness. We will look first briefly at the strategic management process, what it entails, and the units that we will go through as we go through the course for the semester. So the first, we will look at the external environment, which is Unit 2. And then we will look at the internal environment, which when companies examine the external environment and internal environment, they use it to craft their vision and mission statement, which will guide the organization throughout its lifetime. We will then further look at strategy formulation. We will look at business level strategies, corporate level strategies like vertical integration, acquisition and mergers, strategic alliances. Those are the four main strategy formulation we will be looking at. And then we will look at strategy implementation, which really is about the management of the firm in order to implement the strategies. So we look at corporate governance, organizational control and structures, and then we will look at strategic leadership. All of this is in line with the organization performance, which all organizations want to earn above average returns. Strategic management. Strategic management is the management of an organization's resources to achieve its goals and objectives. Strategic management involves setting objectives, analyzing the competitive environment, analyzing the internal organization, evaluating strategies, and ensuring that management rolls out the strategies across the organization. We will now look at some important terms in strategic management. We already looked at the strategic management process, but just to give you a fulsome definition, it is the full set of commitments, decisions, and actions required for a firm to achieve strategic competitiveness and earn above average returns. The process of strategic management includes goal setting, analysis, strategy formulation, strategy implementation, and strategy monitoring. Strategic competitiveness. It is achieved when a firm successfully formulates and implements a value-creating strategy. Now, what is competitive advantage? A firm has a competitive advantage when it implements a strategy that creates superior value for customers and competitors are unable to duplicate or find it too costly to imitate. Other definitions: risk. An investor's uncertainty about the economic gains or losses that will result from a particular investment. Average returns now are returns that are equal to those an investor expects to earn from other investments with similar amount of risk. And finally, above average returns, which I've mentioned several times, is returns in excess of what an investor expects to earn from other investments with similar amount of risk. So we're going to use a case example of McDonald's. McDonald's is highly successful because of its strategy to grow globally and to gain massive economies of scale that provide widespread brand recognition. McDonald's is larger and is more successful in their market than any of its close competitors like Burger King and Wendy's. Adding new food products such as chicken and the McCafe have enhanced its ability to compete against major fast food restaurants. So McDonald's is known for its strategy in terms of following strategic management processes and using the cost leadership as their business level strategy, and also how they have managed the organization and set goals and targets to grow globally, and they have successfully done so. Having said all of that, looking at the external environment, the internal organization, we want to turn our attention now to the competitive landscape, because the nature of competition is changing and is changing at a very rapid pace. So in the past, a firm could do a 5 to 10 year forecast, but that is no longer the case. Companies have to be changing and restructuring and adapting as quickly as possible to deal with the volatile competitive landscape that is happening globally. So first we look at hyper-competitive environments. This is one classification of the modern competitive landscape. So market stability is replaced by instability and change. So it relates to what I was saying just now about being able to forecast, because things are pretty much the same over many, many years, but that is no longer so. Markets are unstable. There is a lot of competition out there. Rapidly escalating competition based on price, quality, positioning. So you are getting better quality products for cheaper prices. Competition to protect or invade established product or geographic markets. And this means that persons that are already in this particular market are very serious about protecting what they have, their market share, etc., while the potential competitors are looking at how they can invade this space so that they can also become a competitor in that particular market. So we say that markets are highly hyper competitive. Then there is the emergence of the global economy. Goods, services, people, skills, and ideas move freely across geographic borders. So we all know the term globalization. Spread of economic innovations around the world. So no longer is it that certain countries were innovative and some others were not. Pretty much all countries now are competing as it relates to technology, and everybody have access to technology, so it's not like it was before. We are in a global economy and innovations are happening all over the world. Political and cultural adjustments are required. So as we merge into a global economy, then we need to be aware of what is happening culturally in other countries, what is the political landscape, and how we can make adjustments so that our business, the product that we're selling, etc., fits into a particular environment. I'm sure that we will look at the Starbucks case, which we will see that when Starbucks went into China, they had to do more tea than coffee because China is a tea drinking society. So that is what it means by cultural. And then political, no, you will have to take in consideration what you can and cannot do in a particular country. Then there is rapid technological change. So the increasing rate of technology change and diffusion means that as soon as you get used to a particular technology, it changes, and then it can be very costly for a company then to immediately change to the new technology. But it is the way it is now, as we see with the cell phone and that kind of thing. As soon as we have a new cell phone, then there's a new one out. Apple, for instance, put out new products very often, and this affects the competitive landscape as well. So we're in the information age where we can just get information at our fingertips. A lot of us are used to Google. Everything we want to know, we just go to Google and search, and therefore we're in the information age where pretty much everybody have access to information. So we therefore have increased knowledge intensity. We know a lot more now than our foreparents or grandparents, parents. We know a lot more than they did because we have all of this information at our fingertips. So we just looked at the competitive landscape, and now we're going to look at strategic flexibility. And it follows from the competitive landscape in that because the environment is so hyper competitive, and then globalization, and then there is technology, and everything is moving so rapid and so fast, then organization needs to have strategic flexibility. And what is this? It is a set of capabilities used to respond to various demands and opportunities existing in a dynamic and uncertain competitive environment. It involves coping with uncertainty and the accompanying risk. So basically, you are going out there to compete in this firm, in this particular market, then you have to be prepared for uncertainty. And the forecast that you may have had in your business plan may very well not be what actually happens. So you have to be prepared for that. But how can firms now maintain their strategic flexibility? First of all, they have to have some amount of organizational slack. So they can't be too rigid. They must be able to respond quickly to changes in the external environment. They also have to be able to engage in some amount of strategic reorientation. So you have to make the necessary changes and adapt to the new normal and kind of replace the knowledge that you had before with the new knowledge as it arises. You also have to have the capacity to learn, the organization in general. And we talk a lot about, these days, a lot about the learning organization and how individuals within the organization have to acquire new and up-to-date skills which will allow the firm to adapt to new changes. So this is very, very important to maintain strategic flexibility that will allow you to respond to the hyper-competitiveness that occurs in the marketplace. And it really does not matter what industry you are competing in. The firm, any business at all, is operating in a volatile economy and markets, and we have to maintain some amount of strategic flexibility. But as we go along throughout the course, we will see how we can maintain flexibility and remain competitive and that kind of thing. So what we are going to turn our attention to now is the two models of above average return. So I've mentioned the word or the term above average return several times. So there are two models. We have the industrial organizational model and we have the resource-based model. The industrial organization model focuses on the external environment. The industry in which a company chooses to compete has a stronger influence on performance than choice managers make inside the organization. This is what the industrial organization is saying. Let us focus on the external because that is what is going to determine whether or not we earn above average returns. The resource-based model, on the other hand, is saying that each organization is a collection of resources and capabilities, and the uniqueness of these is the basis for a firm's strategy and its ability to earn above average returns. So the resource-based model is considering its internal environment, the internal organization. It is saying what we bring to the market is what will cause us to earn above average returns. While the industrial organization model is saying no, it is the external environment that will determine whether or not we earn above average returns. So we are going to look at them in a little more detail individually. So the industrial organization model is based on 4 assumptions. First, we're assuming that the external organization possesses pressures and constraints that determine the strategies that will result in above average returns. We're also assuming that most firms competing within a particular or within a certain segment of it are assumed to control similar strategically relevant resources and to pursue similar strategies in light of these resources. Third assumption is that resources used to implement strategies are highly mobile across firms. And fourth, organizational decision makers are assumed to be rational and committed to acting in the firm's best interest as shown by their profit maximizing behaviors. So the actual model now, so those were the assumptions. Now we're looking at the actual model. What is it saying now? The external environment. So first we study the external environment, especially the industry that you operate in. Because the external environment is very wide. But then within the wider external environment, you have the industry environment. So we need to study that very closely. We're looking at how we can have economies of scale, and this means the more I produce, the less each item costs. We are looking at what are the barriers to market entry. And as we go further in the course, we look at the Porter's 5 forces and we look a little bit more in detail of barriers to market entry. How can we diversify in this particular external environment? Can we use product differentiation? This is a business level strategy that we will look at as well. What is the degree of concentration of firms in the industry? Then we have to look at whether or not this particular industry is attractive. We have to locate an attractive industry with high potential for above average returns. It means that we have to look for an industry that we know that we can go and make money. We can't go into an environment where we are uncertain or the risk is too high. Attractive industry is one whose structural characteristics suggest above average returns. Then, in terms of strategy formulation, we want to identify the strategy called for by the attractive industry to earn above average returns. Strategy formulation now is the selection of a strategy linked with above average returns in a particular industry. Assets and skills is the next component that we will look at. We have to develop or acquire assets and skills needed to implement the strategy. These assets and skills required to implement the chosen strategy are, of course, going to be centered around what is happening in the industry and how fast technology is changing, etc. Strategy implementation now is that you have to use the firm's strengths, which is developed or acquired assets and skills to implement the strategy. Strategy implementation now is the way how we select strategic actions and link them to effective implementation of the chosen strategy. All of these will cause the firm to earn above average returns. If we look at the external environment, find an attractive industry, decide on how we are going to formulate strategy, develop our asset and skills, and then we implement that strategy. And that in some kind of way will kind of ensure, I don't want to say ensure because all markets are very risky, but it will kind of guide us in the right direction to earning above average returns. So next we are going to look at the resource-based model of above average returns. Remember we had said that the industrial organization looks at the external and the resource-based looks at the internal. So strategy is dictated by unique resources and capabilities of the firm. What can the firm do? You have to find an environment in which to exploit these assets. Where are the best opportunities? So based on the resources and capabilities that the firm has, where can we find the best opportunities to use or implement these resources and capabilities? Now there are 4 attributes of resources and capabilities that will cause us to have above average returns. So your firm or the product it is offering or how you want to go in the market has to be valuable. It allows the firm to exploit opportunities or neutralize threats in its external environment. It also has to be rare, possessed by a few, if any, current and potential competitors. So not a lot of competitors have it, if any. Also, your strategy must be costly to imitate. This means that when other firms cannot obtain them or must obtain them at a much higher cost than you would. Non-substitutable now, this means that the firm is organized appropriately to obtain the full benefits of the resources in order to realize a competitive advantage. The valuable, rare, costly to imitate, and non-substitutable is what allows the firm to have its core competencies. Core competencies are the basis of a firm's competitive advantage, their strategic competitiveness, and their ability to earn above average returns. So we will examine the resource-based model and what is needed for the resource-based model to work. So first of all, the resources. Identify the firm's resources, your strengths, your weakness compared to the competitors. The resources are the inputs into the firm production process, and this includes human capital, your machinery, and that kind of thing. Capability. You have to determine the firm capabilities, what it can do better than its competitors. Capability now is the capacity of an integrated set of resources to integratively perform a task or activity. Competitive advantage. You have to determine the potential of the firm's resources and capabilities in terms of a competitive advantage, which is the ability of a firm to outperform its rivals. An attractive industry. So just like the industrial organization model, the resource-based model also looks for an attractive industry where opportunities can be exploited by the firm's resources and capabilities. Then the strategy formulation and implementation. You have to select a strategy that best allows the firm to utilize its resources and capabilities relative to opportunities in the external environment. Strategy formulation and implementation. This is strategic actions taken to earn above average returns. And all of these, the resources, capabilities, competitive advantage, finding an attractive industry, and formulating and implementing that strategy will allow the firm to earn above average returns. And this is what the resource-based model is saying. First, they look at their resources and their capabilities. Then they find an attractive industry. While the resource-based, the industrial organization model is saying no. First, we look at the attractive industry and then we go from there. So that is it for the two models of above average returns. After studying the external environment and the internal organization, the firm has the information it needs to form its vision and its mission statement. Now, what are these? The vision is a picture of what the firm wants to be, and in broad terms, what it wants to ultimately achieve, while the mission specifies the business in which the firm intends to compete and the customers it intends to serve. Let us look now at the firm and its stakeholders. So stakeholders are groups who are affected by the firm's performance and who have claim to its wealth. We have different kinds of stakeholders, but the firm must first maintain performance at an adequate level in order to retain the performance of key stakeholders. This means that they have to at least be earning average returns. Preferably above average, but they have to at least be earning average returns to maintain its stakeholders. We have different kinds of stakeholders. So the first we will look at is capital market stakeholders, and these are shareholders, the major suppliers of capital. It could be the bank that you got the loan from, or whether it was private lenders or venture capitalists that gave you the money up front to run the business, or even after you started the firm, these persons came in and invested in the business, and those are called capital market stakeholders. Then we have product market stakeholders. These are your primary customers, your suppliers, the communities that you operate in, any union that you may be operating under. We call that your product market stakeholders. And then we have our organizational stakeholders, which are the employees, the managers, and the non-managers. All the employees, all the stakeholders are important. I don't know that we can say that one set of stakeholders is more important than the other. But what is the involvement of these different types of stakeholders? So two issues affect the event of stakeholder involvement in the firm. How do you divide the returns to keep stakeholders involved? We have capital market, product market, organizational stakeholders, and this diagram is showing us that here they are all equal, because as I said before, they're equally important. So how do you increase the returns so everyone have more share is what a lot of companies will have to look at continuously. How can I change my strategy, my business level strategy, corporate level strategy, so that I can increase the value for all the stakeholders of the firm? Who are our strategic leaders now? Strategic leaders are people located in different areas and levels of the firm, using the strategic management process to select strategic actions that help the firm achieve its vision and fulfill its mission. Strategic leaders are innovative thinkers and promote innovation in their organization. They have to have a global mindset, which means that they need to be ambicultural approach to management. They need to have an ambicultural approach to management. They also need to be able to predict the effects of the firm's profits of strategic decisions that they are considering. So in this lecture, we looked at the strategic management process in a kind of wholesome way. It is an introductory lecture, and therefore you may not understand all the different topics or concepts that I spoke about here, and that is okay. As we go along, all of the different areas that we looked at, we will look at them in more detail, unit by unit. So the next lecture is going to be on the external environment. Then we will look at the internal environment. Then we will start to look at the different strategies, business level strategies and corporate level strategies, and you will get to understand it in more detail. This lecture was just to introduce you to the different concepts. So it is okay if you don't understand a lot of the things that were mentioned. As we go along, you will understand them a lot better, and understand why I had to do an introductory lecture to just introduce you to the various concepts and units that we will be looking at, and how the strategic management process fits, how the different part fits as a whole. Okay, thank you.